Good morning. My weekly word is on a very cold day in January. And the first is a story where hell freezes over. A story of amazing bravery and survival. This is a secular story which I base on Ephesians 5:15 through 20 of being wise and not foolish. Based on my knowledge as a radioman on the USS Canisteo in 1946 and 47, my skipper advised the skipper of the USS Pine Island, a seaplane tender, that the weather did not look good for a mapping mission. Although the weather over the continent was fine, at the ocean side it was not. The pilot of the Marine Patrol Bomber, PBM, convinced the skipper they could overfly the inclement weather at the coast and complete their mapping mission. The skipper said okay and joined the crew as an observer. So at the tail end of 1946, the United States Navy sent an expedition into the stark cold of Antarctica to photograph the terrain from the air and lay claim to the huge continent at the bottom of the globe. Many of the Navy's men on the ships and on the expedition were fresh from service and recently ended World War II. I was 18 years old at the time, and this was my first time away from home. I was a radioman, as I said, on the USS Canisteo, and monitoring the plane, the PBM-2, named George 1, which was being used to photograph that part of the east coast of Antarctica. There are two accounts of this plane crash. You can Google Antarctic Mayday George 1 or buy the book Where Hell Freezes Over. Both give excellent accounts of what happened between 30 December 1946 and the rescue of 6 airmen 13 days later in January 1947. This is the true story of those 9 men. 3 of those who were killed. They were betrayed by an enemy of another kind. As their plane started to fly above the desolate continent, the weather threw a whiteout, a combination of a slanting sheet of ice on the land and low clouds that made it seem like the air ahead of the plane was clear when it was not. The pilot and co-pilot were preparing to do a 180 and return to the USS Pine Island as the weather was not clearing at all and in fact was getting worse. They were foolish even to try to start the mission. The blinded plane slammed into a mountainside and exploded. 3 men were killed. 6 others were injured, most of them seriously. Their only shelter was a badly damaged fuselage of the plane. They had food supply intended for a few days trip and no way to communicate with their rescuers because their radio was gone. For 13 days, the men waited for discovery or death. Even when they made contact with another PBM seaplane, which led them from the air to the coast, they had to struggle, wounded as they were, to walk 7 miles through a blizzard, winds, snow, and ice to reach safety. The co-pilot was named Bill Kearns, and his son wrote Where Hell Freezes Over. This was the harrowing tale fueled by extensive research by him. and with a compelling narrative drive and a lot of heart, he trumpets the breathtaking survival story as a shining moment in 20th American century history. And I was part of the rescue team. The second story is about Ephesians 5, verse 19. As young, sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs among yourselves, singing and making melody to the Lord in your hearts. This story takes me back 80 years and in an evening worship service in the new year in 1943 when I was 15 years old. At times in those evening services, I would play the trumpet solo. At other times, there would sometimes be an impromptu, unrehearsed singing of a song. My father heard of singing a melody. He grabbed my hand and off we went to walk to the front of the congregation. "What's up?" I thought. My father said softly, "Sing the chorus with me. In my heart there rings a melody." I knew the chorus from Sunday school. Here's what the author of the medley hymn said. According to Mr. Roth, the hymn came suddenly to him while assisting with evangelism in Texas in 1923. He recalled, "That evening I introduced the song by having more than 200 boys and girls sing at an open-air meeting, after which the audience joined in the singing. I was thrilled as it seemed my whole being was being transformed into that song. I was thrilled that evening as my father and I sang the chorus. In my heart there rings a melody, there rings a melody with heaven's harmony. In my heart there rings a melody, there rings a melody of love. My father in his Irish brogue would then sing verse 2. I love the Christ who died on Calvary, for he washed my sins away. He put within my heart a melody, and I know it's there to stay. I would then join him in the chorus along with the congregation. Who was in that congregation? Elizabeth Chapman was there, and little did we know that evening that 11 years later, we would be married and have that melody of love in our hearts for 64 years. God bless you and have a good week.